Hi, I'm Holly Henn. I'm President and CEO of Critical Business Analysis. I've worked in the construction industry for over 25 years as a labor, project engineer, project manager.
Hello, I'm Chris Stevie. Been a project manager for Rudolph Libby. Been working for 28 years with Rudolph Libby, working on large projects in northern Ohio and southern Michigan, including projects like the Hollywood Casino, Hilton Garden Inn, Perrysburg.
Today we're going to talk about why you want to create a schedule and the different requirements that you may have to meet, whether it's an owner-driven schedule, a contract requirement. As a project manager, you use the schedules to manage your projects, and you use that information to help you determine how you best want to manage costs or labor. So the topics that relate to that are: what decisions do you make as a project manager when you have to develop a project schedule that's a contract requirement? And you kind of have a knowledge of what your owner's team is like, what the project is, who you're working for, and how do you develop that schedule, or what are the things that you think about when you're developing that schedule that might be different from, I'm going to develop my own schedule because I'm going to use it and I don't necessarily have to present it to anybody. It's not going to, it's never going to be something that maybe would show up in a court of law. The different ways that I would use that schedule to manage my project.
So it's a good question. If I'm creating a schedule that by the contract, I'm going to read the contract thoroughly, know what's required to be in the schedule at a minimum. Then I'm going to create the schedule that really tells a story of how we're going to get from point A to point B, including all the long lead times, including all the stressful activities, making sure that we've got the whole project covered in enough detail to communicate correctly, to help the project get done up within budget, within the schedule, within the quality that's required to get the project done. The other thing was internal schedules. I'm creating a schedule for myself. There's going to be the resource loading, the cost loading that helps me keep track of the project and reports back to executives the quality and the timeliness of the project.
So there's so many people in our industry that when you say resource load and cost load a schedule, they're instantly like, no, I'm not going to do that, right? They're like, no, that takes way too much time and effort. Don't see the benefit of doing it. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this, because I know that you use that information as a project manager on a regular basis. And how does that help you, the project manager, do your job, regardless of who wants to see it and how they might want to use that information?
Resource loading sounds really difficult, but really isn't. You're really just trying to figure out the crew size that's needed for each activity. If you have a good estimate and you plug that information into your schedule, it gives you how many people you should have, and you can go out and site and look and say, well, I don't have enough people, or I have too many people. This is going to affect the overall budget.
So how did you use that resource information? Like I think one of the major jobs you worked on was the Peloton building, right?
Yep.
In NSG, huge amounts of dirt work quantities, lots of equipment and people. So how did you use that resource information? When did you analyze it? And then what were some of the decisions you made from that information that you got?
Well, you would analyze it every day or every week, just looking at how many people you have on site compared to what the plan was. And you're tracking the duration of the activities, the original duration, just confirming that, this looks appropriate. We're making progress. We're not going to have a budget issue in the end. We're not going to have a schedule issue in the end. It's something that you have to look at it constantly. Just don't put it on the shelf and
do it once a month.
Do it once
Yeah. So did you cost load your schedules?
I have cost loaded my schedules. It gives a nice cash flow. It kind of indicates if you're doing well for the month, if you're getting the work done, getting the equipment there, billing accurately, gives the owner an indication of how much money they're going to pay on a monthly basis, which is very helpful for them because they have to report to people, including the bank, and then they can see exactly where you're at in the project and helps them handle their monies. So
would you say, like, if you would break down the effort, like how many hours a week do you think you spent? And I don't mean like getting it built, right? Because getting it built is a different effort than updates and managing.
Yeah.
So when you're into the update and managing part of the schedule, how many hours a week do you think you spent managing the schedule?
Well, that depends on the person. Depends on how they record the information. Typically, I would keep a paper copy on my desk and mark down stuff that's changed or completed or started, and then once a week go in and add the information I've written on the paper. So you take out a lot of hard work, a lot of long hours trying to recreate what happened in the past.
So would you say that like on a daily basis, as you're overhearing conversations take place in the field, or you went out and took a walk, or you're driving through the project and you're making your notes, once a week you're sitting down to actually update the schedule based on your notes? So it's like minimal effort every day versus trying to do a schedule update for a whole month. That's going to be a few hours at a time.
Correct.
So maybe that's like 2 to 3 hours a week of a project manager's time if you're going to use the schedule to manage your work. I think that's probably about how much time I would spend on it. And I didn't necessarily do resources and cost loading every time. I did it when it was a requirement, although I maybe didn't always load the resources into my schedule, which I do think would have helped me be a better project manager when it came to the financial forecasting, because most companies have 2 separate systems. You have a schedule, you have a financial management system, and you have to forecast in both of them.
Right.
And if you do the work to put them together, it makes it a lot easier to do the other. But I definitely was resource managing based on the information I got from my superintendents on durations and people. And then I would also enter that into the financial side. So I think one way or the other, as a project manager, you're doing it. You maybe just aren't recording it into a software program that you could then run reports against, right?
Right.
Like, I think most people are doing it. They just don't.
Yeah, it comes back to your contract requirements. So if you're required to track financials in the schedule, yeah, you would do it in the schedule, but on the other hand, you're going to do it
Anyway,
yeah.
So like when I want to circle back to this because you used a really good word at the beginning where you said, I don't remember exactly what you said, building the story of how you're going to start and finish. And I think that's a big piece that people miss as project managers and engineers and superintendents. The schedule is a bar chart,
Right.
but it's a story.
You need to talk to your key stakeholders to get the whole story. You need to know all the activities that are associated with the project. You need to look at the estimate to see how they figured it, to make sure you're not missing pieces. Once you tie that all together and talk to the key stakeholders and understand what they need to have done to create the logic in the schedule, that gives you kind of the story that you're looking for.
Right.
And from point A to point B, to getting from start to finish, the key stakeholders are important.
Yes.
To get their buy-in.
So how have you found in your career the most efficient way to talk to your stakeholders, the best way, I know everybody's different. Sometimes as a project manager, you get a completely different team every project that you start. What I've learned is you gotta get to know your key team players first a little bit. You kind of gotta feel their personalities out because every strategy is different in getting that story extracted. Some of the tools that I use if I'm working with people who really like to share their knowledge and really want to make sure that I understand their contribution to the project, asking questions, long way, right? Asking how, what, why, and when goes a huge way in getting the information I need out of them, and they don't even realize that they're giving me schedule data, right? Because when you sit down with most superintendents and you say, I need to build a schedule, they're like, no, I'm busy and I have other things to do. So asking questions in a way that makes it more about them, I found to be an extremely useful tactic. And the other way, I've worked with people who are, just less communicative and don't feel like they really want to participate, in a team effort, and they have their little piece and that's all they're worried about is taking a walk. If you're doing an action with that person while you're asking them questions, they're less likely to notice the questions.
Yeah, what I found is most people generally don't want to help. So you explain to them that and they want to help. Be honest. Don't try to say I've got 10 days when it's actually a 20-day duration. Communicate and just keep asking questions to your point. Ask more questions on top of questions, not to bother them, but just to get the answer that you're looking for, so you can create your schedule. I always call my key stakeholders and talk to them, so I know their answer before I step into the meeting, so I don't get bombarded, and I can support my key stakeholders with their decisions and their ideas. Be open-minded. because people have good ideas. You need to be open-minded to somebody else's idea.
Yeah, like no idea is a stupid idea, even when it seems to be a stupid idea, right? It's like, there's no way you can put 20 electricians in that room.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so tell me why not.
Right.
And maybe it's not 20 electricians, it's 15, but we've figured it out, how to get whatever solved.
And it's always important to get those key stakeholders into a separate meeting room, not the overall meeting with all the players.
Right.
And brainstorm. We've got a problem. To be honest, we've got a problem. We need to finish this in the next 30 days. How are we going to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And usually there's a way, and they come up with good solutions as brainstorming to find the best solution to get us out of this fix.
Yeah. And I also find that, like, especially with the people who are running the field and working in the field, tradespeople, that they don't get much time to think, right? They're always doing. And so when you can provide them a place to sit down and be like, I just need you to be with me for 10 minutes, and don't rush them through that process, they do sit and think. And like you said, most people do want help, and you do get some really great ideas from that process, especially when there's not 10 other people in the room watching them think. That's a good way to just shut everybody down, because nobody wants 10 people staring at them while they're trying to problem solve.
Yeah, or give them the idea and let them go home and think about it. You think about how we solve problems all the time, then you come up with a solution that would work.
Yeah.